Alright guys, welcome to Flavo Rihanna's MMA show, brought to you by Four Corner Sports. UFC Atlantic City's officially in the books. Happened this past Saturday. It was headlined by Erin Blanchfield, the hometown native, versus French woman Manon Fiorot, or Fior. I feel like there's multiple pronunciations for Manon's name, but last name. And then the co-main event was Vicente Luque versus Joaquin Buckley, which I'll talk about. Chris Weidman, we got to see him in action for the first time since I think it was the Boston card where he fought Brad Tavares. And we got a couple of good fights on the prelims. Yeah, Nate Train versus Jamal Emmers. I think that was a feature prelim. Angel Pacheco versus Callan Loughran, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly. But we'll talk about those fights, but we'll start it off with the main event. Manon Fiorot versus Erin Blanchfield, and Erin Blanchfield came in as the heavy favorite. I think she ended up closing out as a minus 198 favorite, and you were able to get Manon Fiorot by the time the books had closed before they stepped into the octagon. I believe she was maybe like a plus 130 or something of that nature. So obviously, close, people were thinking that the lines were too exaggerated for Erin Blanchfield. I unfortunately picked Erin Blanchfield, which would tell you that Manon Fiorot ended up winning. I had gotten Erin Blanchfield at a minus 160. And I felt like at a minus 198, I think that would have been fairly irresponsible. Because I felt like the fight was going to be close. But, man, the fight wasn't close at all. It was actually the opposite way around. Manon Fiorot ended up dominating all 5 rounds. With the exception of that one hiccup that she ended up having, when she ended up picking up and tossing Erin Blanchfield around on the first round, where Erin Blanchfield ended up catching her in a guillotine, where Fiorot was able to manage and escape that guillotine. And ever since that, and that happened early in round 1. Ever since that, Manon was able to set herself into a groove where she was able to dominate from round 2 to the final bell. And the counter strikes, I think the size difference is something I definitely ended up seeing when both ladies were inside the octagon. This fight had a lot of stakes in this bout. I mean, this was pretty much going to set up the number 1 contender fight. This was the number 1 contender fight. This was going to set up for the winner of Shevchenko versus Grasso Part 3, because everyone knows that Grasso won the first one. Shevchenko and Grasso ended up tying in the Noche UFC, and that was his second fight. So they are going to settle this for the trilogy. I'm hoping that Alexa Grasso wins, because I would love to see that there is more movement in this women's flyweight division. Not to say that I don't want Shevchenko to win, but I just want there to be more activity. And both ladies, when it comes to Grasso and Shevchenko, they don't fight that often. They fight about maybe twice a year at best. More so Shevchenko than Grasso, where there's a longer time gap in between fights. And you don't want that if you're, any type of challenger. Because honestly, women's flyweight division is getting up there with a lot of prospects. Well, not prospects, but a lot of contenders. You have Rose Namajunas, who's waiting in the background. Macy Barber, who's been on a tear, which I really do feel that she should have lost at least 1 or 2 of those fights. Definitely the Miranda Maverick one. Although I had money on her winning that fight. And I can't remember off the top of my head. Maybe Andrea Lee. I think that was the other one that I think it was close enough where it's like, wow. But either way, Macy Barber is on a good tear. You have Natalia Silva, who's on the up and coming. And you have ladies like Tracy Cortez, who win all her fights, but unfortunately the time schedule, whether it's injuries or personal family matters, derail her from being very active inside the octagon. So you have those ladies that are in the background waiting for a title shot, because they're pretty much the next breed that's going to be coming in and trying to take that belt from Grasso or Shevchenko if Shevchenko does manage to win. And Fiorot pretty much killed, Erin Blanchfield, with counter punches, the size, the reach. She was very physically imposing on Blanchfield, and this is one of the few times that Blanchfield has been, pretty much dominated in this manner, inside the octagon with a size discrepancy, a reach discrepancy, and a power discrepancy. We saw that her have a little bit of issues at one point, in some previous bouts, and I know prior to that fight, the only time she's ever lost was to Tracy Cortez, which came down to a very controversial decision. But overall, she did end up losing. And I really do feel that Blanchfield is going to have to fight somebody back. I personally feel that she's going to have to fight somebody like a Caitlin Sermonara, who was formerly known as Caitlin Shakigian. And Manon is just like a beefier, bulkier, stronger version of Caitlin Chukagian, and maybe her and Manning can run that back after she's able to get through Caitlin, because Caitlin likes a point and fight. Same thing with Manning Fiorot. The only difference is that Manning hits a lot harder, and Manning is more of a counter striker than Caitlin is. And Caitlin will just try to throw 1-2 punches and then step back. And Manning, what she wants you to do is she wants you to come to her. She'll throw that over right hand, and then she'll step back and she'll try to, recalculate how she's gonna process the rest of the fight. So, Erin Blanchfield looked like the smaller fighter in here. The other option is that, Erin Blanchfield could go up into 135 pounds. And the reason why I do say that is because 135 pounds is a very depleted weight division for women, right? And you have Raquel Pennington versus Juliana Pena. That I'm expecting that to be the fight, because I know the UFC wants to see possibly Juliana, win the belt. I mean, nobody's really happy that Raquel Pennington is a champion. To be honest, there are many times that I forget that she ended up winning. All right, and I know that she wants to take a lot of time off, which I really, really hate. Wants to take a lot of time off, wants to hopefully fight in October or November. Why? When you fought just in January, why do you need so many months off, knowing that you're holding a damn division, which I know it's pretty much laughable that we call it a division, because there are 145ers that are at 135 pounds, all right? So, yeah, I really would like to see maybe like one of these 125ers go up to 135 pounds. Maybe Erin Blanchfield can get 1 or 2 victories and put herself right in that position, because the rollback to 125 to be in a title picture, I really believe that she's gonna need maybe like 2 more wins, and those wins are gonna be a lot more competitive than if she goes up to 135. So that's something that she should probably look into. Manon, she should just sit out until the trilogy between Grasso and Shevchenko is all finished, because there's no point. She's 34 years old. She doesn't have that wiggle room that Erin Blanchfield has to, climb back for a title shot. This is it. If she doesn't get this done, then her next move would have to be 135 pounds to try to see if she could get a belt, because she doesn't have a lot of, road. I mean, she doesn't have a lot of time left to, have multiple title, opportunities like a Holly Holm, who the UFC loves and would give her many title opportunities. And so it's Manon Fiorot. She's gonna have to sit this one out. If not, I would feel like that's a really bad management by her group. Co-main event was Joaquin Buckley versus Vicente Luque. This was a big matchup, because Joaquin Buckley, the first time he's fighting a ranked fighter, he was a former middleweight, comes down to welterweight, has success in welterweight. I believe he was 2-0 going into that fight in welterweight. Facing a good fighter in Vicente Luque, who many are questioning whether or not he is on the back nine of his career, because he doesn't seem to be that same killer that he once was. And I am one of those people that feels like he is not this all violence guy that he once was. I feel like he tries to mainly grapple. He mainly tries to, strike, very precisely. And he's not all up in your face type of, fighter, right? And honestly, Joaquin Buckley was moving very well laterally, going in and out in that fight. Buckley showed that he had the power on his side compared to Luque, and he was more agile. His footwork was phenomenal, moving in and out, left and right, making Luque having to stand there inside the pocket and just get hit. And whenever Buckley ended up landing a clean shot to the body of Luque, it really did hurt Luque, and Luque was starting to crumble. And I think it was in round 2 where Luque tried to, take down Buckley. Buckley pulled him into, put him onto the floor, wasn't on full mount, and then just started wailing punches away. And Luque was not trying to maneuver out of it. He just crumbled down in a modified fetal position and was just getting hammered. And Buckley ended up winning. Buckley said in the post-fight interview, or was it the press conference, the post-fight press conference, where it seemed like Buckley did not want to, where it seemed like Luque did not want to be there, because he noticed during the stare downs that it showed that he had no interest on really trying to be there with Buckley. And I don't know if that's true or not. I've never been in a fight inside the octagon, but I will say this, is that if that's the case, I mean, it's not good that you kind of self-checked out before the fight even happened. And Buckley just took advantage of that. And now Buckley, he's going to be ranked. I'm pretty sure the rankings already came out not that long ago. Luque was ranked number 11. I'm pretty sure Buckley is probably no lower than 12. All right, in the rankings, Buckley wants a ranked opponent, because anytime that he was trying to fight up, ranked opponents were not trying to give him any type of shine. So now Buckley wants to fight somebody within the rankings. Me personally, the people that I see him fighting is Neil Magny. Neil Magny has the most wins inside the UFC's welterweight division. Jeff Neal just recently lost against Ian Machado Gary, who honestly, it seemed like Ian was just running around and just point fighting at that point. Or you can run it back with Kevin Holland, which they both had a fight at 185 pounds during the pandemic era in 2020. But Holland ended up knocking out Buckley by just sniping him. And then the dark horse pick, which I would like to see him fight, me personally, is to see him fight Michael Chiesa. Michael Chiesa, hasn't fought since Kevin Holland ended up submitting him in, I think it was in, I want to say Miami, if I'm not mistaken. And that was Miami of last year, not this year. And Michael Chiesa, I feel like is a good test matchup for one Joaquin Buckley. Featured fight was Nate the Train versus Jamal Emmers. Jamal Emmers, good crafty fighter, featherweight. He was very long, lengthy, fighting Nate the Train, who was a fan favorite. I believe Jamal Emmers ended up knocking out Dennis Bajuka, who ended up fighting earlier in the card and ended up winning by knockout. But Emmers was a heavy favorite. I think he was at one point he was a minus 210, and then you were able to get Nate the Train at plus 160, right? I was able to get him at plus 140, and I was just like, you know what? Nate's chin is a little bit questionable at times. He gets hit a lot. Emmers is, one of those long, ragey fighters who could try to pick you apart. And Nate the Train got beat up for the first 2 minutes, and then somehow was able to muscle through, turn this into a bully type of mentality type of a fight. Well, a bully type of a fight where it was clinch work, it's dirty boxing, uppercuts and stuff like that. Wearing punches to the body, wearing out Jamal Emmers, because it looked like he expended so much energy trying to take on Nate the Train. Nate the Train ends up coming in, throwing an uppercut, throwing a combination, right hand, bam, hurts Jamal Emmers, drops into the floor, hammer fist, and fights over. Nate Landwehr is your winner. And I feel like anytime Nate Landwehr ends up coming in and fighting, the man always delivers, especially in front of a crowd. We saw how he ended up fighting in front of San Diego against David Onama, where that was one of the craziest fights I've ever seen, because it looked like David Onama was just giving him the business up until Nate Landwehr ended up going into like a third gear and coming back from the dead and finding a way to actually winning. So that was huge right there. Man, I want to see Nate Landwehr on the UK card. I know Nathaniel Wood usually fights in front of his hometown in UK. Put those two together, I feel like that would be great level of fight. I feel like Nathaniel Wood is a true bantamweight that just goes up to heavy, that goes up to featherweight. Who, me personally, I feel like he doesn't cut properly. So that's why he's in featherweight, and he's always the smaller guy, but always has a speed advantage compared to these featherweights. And then Nate Landwehr is a very bulky featherweight who hits hard. You know, yes, he gets hit a lot, but yet he can still knock you out and gets into these brawls. And I feel like that can be a great fight for the UK pay-per-view. You can put that on the prelims, if not, you know. And yeah, you have Chris Weidman versus Bruno Silva. Chris Weidman 4-0 going into his fight in Atlantic City. Started off a lot of his fights coming into his career were in Atlantic City. Facing Bruno Silva, never lost against the Silva. I was only faced one Silva, and it was twice, and that was Anderson Silva, facing his second Silva in his resume. And Bruno Silva is nothing like Anderson Silva. But also, Bruno Silva doesn't really have great takedown defense. And who has great takedowns? Chris Weidman, the All-American. And why I say that? Because that man went to work in rounds 1 and 2, where he was taking down Bruno Silva, holding him down, making Bruno Silva feel exhausted, trying to muscle out of these clinches and exchanges and wrestling takedowns. Chris Weidman put on a good clinic, and honestly, he was an underdog. I was able to get him at a plus 220 underdog, and I was like, there's no way that Bruno Silva is able to stop these takedowns, and that wasn't even the big story. The big story was the eyepokes, because Chris Weidman, for some reason, has his hands out this way, right? And as he's jabbing, he throws his hands, and they open up, and he's always poking Bruno Silva. No, points were taken away. At one point, it was a double eye poke that we ended up seeing in the octagon between Bruno and Chris Weidman, where the referee was thinking about taking a point away, but didn't take a point away. And then in round 3, we saw more of the same, more eye pokes, and Bruno Silva got eye poked, finger deep into the eye, drops to the floor. And Chris thought that he ended up hitting him. No, Chris ended up double eye poking him, not once but twice, coming in with each hand, and Bruno just falls to the floor. Chris Weidman tries wailing on him, and the fight stops. TKO victory for Chris Weidman in round 3. But wait, you see Bruno Silva, throwing a big hissy fit, complaining, yelling at judges, saying that I got eye poke. How are you guys going to stop the fight? There's no way for this. He talks to Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman's like, everything's going to be okay, buddy. Don't you worry. Next thing you know, Bruce Buffer announced it as a TKO victory, and Chris Weidman gets his hand raised. Bruno Silva leaves out with disgust, right? And Weidman goes on the mic and he says, I get it that you got eye poked, but you can't just drop to the floor and hold on to your head and your face, because it's going to look like I ended up really hitting you, and the ref is not going to know in real time that you got eye poked. So next time, just try not to fall on the floor. And I honestly, I know it sounds egregious, but I really agree with him, because it kind of looks like Bruno Silva was trying to figure out a way on how to get out of it. You know, he was losing both rounds, getting his ass kicked. I know he was getting eye poked and stuff like that, but dropping down to the floor in that manner didn't look good whatsoever. It did look like he got knocked down, and Chris Weidman capitalized. What's next for Chris Weidman? Me personally, I have no idea, because the man's about to be 40 years old. Bruno Silva, on the other hand, this man is probably going to appeal this, which I don't blame him if he does. I don't think he's going to win it. But the UFC is probably going to put it with another wrestler, because they know that he can't handle the wrestling onslaught that comes with wrestlers knowing that he is terrible when it comes to takedown defense. So that's what ended up happening. And then the curtain jerker of the fight, Callan Loeffling versus Angel Pacheco. I think that ended up winning fight of the night, if I'm not mistaken. Great fight. Angel Pacheco, I don't know what he's made out of, but man, he was getting his ass beaten down by Callan Loeffling, and then Callan ends up muscling through a decision. Honestly, that was one of my favorite fights of the fight. That's actually the first time that an Irish fighter has won since like 2014 or something like that. That's not named Conor McGregor or Ian Machado Gary. That is pretty remarkable. Knowing that the Irish have been inside the MMA community for quite some time, and you know, the two biggest Irish stars, you know, have collected the majority of the wins, and now you have Callan Loeffling, who ends up collecting a victory inside the UFC. First time he got it. I think last time we saw him was in that Australia card. But I really like the stuff that he ended up imposing inside that fight. But until then, guys, I'm Flavio Oriana. Thank you for looking at my reaction video. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Peace, guys, and have a good day. See ya.